So I want you to picture this scenario for a second. Um, it's exactly 8:12 a.m. You are sitting in this very sterile, brightly lit corporate boardroom.
Oh yeah, the classic high-stakes setup.
Exactly. And there are, half-full coffee cups just scattered down the length of this massive mahogany conference table. And up on the projector screen at the front of the room, there are three distinct locations, just three dots on a map.
Right.
And each one of those dots represents a completely different potential future for the company over, like, the next decade.
I mean, it really is the defining moment for any business. The leadership team sitting around that table has probably been studying those three options for months. They've
Yeah.
done the site visits. They've run the financial models until their eyes practically cross.
Yeah, until the spreadsheets all blend together.
Exactly. And on paper, those three locations probably look practically identical.
The spreadsheets all balance out.
Mm-hmm.
But when a CEO or, say, a head of operations leans forward in that chair, they aren't looking for a spreadsheet answer anymore.
No, they're not.
They're looking for reality.
Uh-huh.
They're going to ask the one question that every single expansion team eventually faces, which is, where will this actually work?
Which represents just a massive shift in perspective, because at 8:12 a.m. on decision day, the ultimate question in that boardroom isn't which site is cheapest anymore.
Right.
It is entirely about execution.
Right.
You aren't trying to figure out if you can afford the expansion at that point. You are trying to figure out if the environment you're choosing is, well, actually prepared to support you, or if you're going to be fighting an uphill battle every single step of the way.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand what that reality looks like and to really grasp the intense psychology of that boardroom, we're doing a deep dive into this fascinating breakdown from the Fulton County Industrial Development Agency.
Yeah, the FCIDA.
Right, they're based out of Johnstown, New York.
Mm-hmm.
And they have essentially mapped out the true anatomy of corporate expansion. And honestly, whether you are running a manufacturing empire or, just choosing a new neighborhood to live in, or if you're just insanely curious about how cities grow and attract wealth, this decision-making framework applies perfectly.
It really does. And the foundational takeaway from their approach is that while financial models get you into the room, the final decision rests entirely on predictability and preparation.
Okay.
So let's actually look at the people sitting around that conference table, starting with the finance team.
Yeah, let's start there, because I always just assume the CFO is looking for, like, the cheapest land and the lowest local taxes today. You look at the price tag, you find the lowest number, and you just vote for that dot on the map.
Which seems logical, right?
Yeah. But this framework flips that entirely on its head.
It does, because the immediate price tag is really just a baseline. What the CFO is actually doing is looking 10 years out.
10 years. Wow.
Right. Today's numbers are fine, but a corporate expansion is this massive capital outlay. It takes years to recoup. So the absolute worst enemy of a CFO is an endless cycle of what-if scenarios.
So what does a what-if scenario actually look like in this context?
Well, imagine you build a $50 million facility just because the land was cheap. But then, say 3 years later, the local government decides to overhaul their tax code just to cover some municipal deficit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, or what if the region doesn't actually have a plan for long-term infrastructure maintenance, and suddenly, out of nowhere, they impose massive new water and sewer fees on industrial users?
Okay, so a cheap sticker price today could actually be hiding a total financial sinkhole tomorrow.
Exactly. And that's why transparent frameworks allow that leadership team to build confident projections. They're actively looking for communities that have stable tax structures, a really clear history of predictable financial governance.
Right, they want to know the rules of the game aren't going to change halfway through the first quarter.
Precise.
And while the CFO is agonizing over the next decade, you also have the investors in the room. And they are hyper-focused on a much shorter, but honestly, arguably more stressful timeline.
Oh, absolutely. Investors measure success by momentum. They just want to know how quickly the project can move forward.
Speed is everything.
Right. So they're tracking timelines for equipment procurement, construction phases, hiring. But the hidden trapdoor in all of this, the thing that literally keeps investors awake at night, is the approval timeline.
Permitting. It always comes down to permitting. It just feels like this is the black hole where ambitious projects go to die.
In a lot of municipalities, it absolutely is. But the ideal metric here, like the golden ratio that investors are actively hunting for, is a coordinated process with structured timeframes of roughly 60 to 90 days for reviews and permitting.
Wait, 60 to 90 days. Why is 90 days the magic number, and why is it so hard for most places to actually hit that?
It really comes down to municipal coordination. In a lot of places, permitting stretches out unpredictably because the process is just completely fragmented.
Like different departments not talking to each other.
Exactly. You have to go to the zoning board, which maybe only meets on the third Tuesday of the month. And if someone on the board has a question and you miss that window, you have to wait another 30 days.
Oh, that's brutal.
And it doesn't stop there. Then you need an environmental review, then a traffic study, then a historical commission sign-off. So you might think you are going to break ground in April, and suddenly it's November, the ground is frozen solid, and you are still waiting on a water permit.
That unpredictability would just completely bleed capital. It makes me think of trying to buy and renovate a house, you know?
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. Like a low asking price on a fixer-upper doesn't mean anything if the city takes a full year just to approve your kitchen blueprints.
Right.
You end up paying 2 mortgages for a year while literally nothing happens. So, of course, you would gladly pay a premium for a house in a town where the rules are clear and the permits are processed in just a matter of weeks.
And that is the exact psychology of the investor. When a region can guarantee a 60 to 90-day review window, it tells the investor that the local government actually talks to its own department.
They have their act together.
Exactly. It demonstrates that the town operates like a functional business rather than a bureaucratic maze.
Okay, hold on. I have to push back here a little bit.
Sure.
Because we live in a business culture that practically worships risk, right? You look at Silicon Valley or the Elon Musks of the world, and the narrative is always about rolling the dice, making huge bets, moving fast and breaking things.
Yeah, that's the startup mantra.
Right. So why is this room full of high-level executives suddenly acting so terrified of a little uncertainty? I mean, shouldn't business be about taking risks?
Well, what's fascinating here is that there is a massive difference between product risk and execution risk. Taking a risk on a visionary new technology or some disruptive market idea, that is where companies want to place their bets. But you do not want to roll the dice on your plumbing.
Okay, fair point. You don't innovate on the sewer line.
Exactly. You want your execution risk to be absolute zero. At this specific stage of corporate expansion, the goal is entirely about eliminating friction. A transparent framework and a 90-day timeline, they turn the physical expansion from a wild gamble into a highly calculated, predictable step forward.
Right, they save their risk appetite for the products they are building, not the building itself.
Exactly.
But, knowing your taxes are stable for 10 years and getting your permits in 90 days means absolutely nothing if you physically cannot build the factory to generate the revenue.
Right.
Which brings us to a completely different perspective at that conference table. Because financial models don't assemble products.
No, they don't. So we have to shift our focus to the operations leadership.
No.
While the finance team is dealing in, projections and timelines, the operations director is dealing in physics.
Physics, I like that.
Yeah, they're dealing with the physical realities of moving heavy freight and pulling massive amounts of electricity.
And a manufacturing line does not operate on municipal promises, right? It relies on physical capacity. So operations leaders are looking for infrastructure-ready or shovel-ready industrial sites.
Right, and the term shovel-ready gets thrown around a lot in real estate, but in industrial development, it has a very specific, intensive meaning.
What does it actually mean in this context?
It means the local development agency has already done the heavy lifting. They have already...
Exactly. It doesn't matter how great the hardware is if the greed behind the wall cannot handle the draw.
That is a perfect analogy, because you cannot plug a 21st century manufacturing facility into 20th century infrastructure. A lot of towns will just point to an empty cornfield and say, hey, you can build here. We'll run the power lines eventually.
Right, trust us.
Exactly. And an operations director hears that and immediately calculates the months of delay while the utility company figures out how to upgrade a substation that's miles away.
It's like trying to build a 50-story skyscraper on a foundation poured for a single-family home. The preparation just has to match the ambition.
It really does. And take the Fulton County IDA's approach as a prime example of how this is actually done right. They don't just market empty land. They have built a portfolio of specific, heavily prepared locations like the Tryon Technology Park.
So what does that preparation actually look like on the ground at a place like Tryon?
Well, Tryon used to be a state-run facility. Transforming it into a technology park meant the IDA had to go in and proactively demolish old structures, upgrade the internal road network for heavy freight, and install a brand new, massive water and sewer infrastructure.
Wow. before anyone even bought in.
Exactly. They secured the environmental sign-offs before a single corporate tenant ever signed a lease.
So they essentially absorbed all the friction.
They absorbed the friction, yeah, but they also sent a profound psychological signal to the corporate boardroom. When an operations team sees a site like Tryon, it proves that the region has been planning for growth for years. It shows that the local government is proactive rather than reactive.
They aren't scrambling to figure out how to accommodate you. They literally built the capacity specifically waiting for someone like you to arrive.
Right. That level of proactive regional management tells the company everything they need to know about what the relationship will be like for the next 20 years.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because if a county has its act together enough to lay fiber optics and heavy water lines on speculation, they are a competent partner.
Okay, so you have the permits approved in 90 days. You have the heavy-duty power grid and the pipes in the ground. The physical foundation is completely poured. But a state-of-the-art facility doesn't run on electricity alone, which brings up the human element.
The workforce question. Yes, because eventually someone at the table looks at those 3 dots on the map and asks the most critical question of the morning. Can we actually build a team here?
Because you need people to push the buttons.
Right. And for many modern companies, the availability of skilled human talent has actually surpassed real estate costs as the single most important factor in expansion.
The breakdown from Fulton County highlights a really fascinating distinction here. Leadership teams are no longer just looking for a labor pool. They are demanding a workforce strategy.
Yes.
What is the real difference between a pool and a strategy?
So a labor pool is just a demographic statistic. It's basically a passive spreadsheet that a town hands you saying, look, there are 50,000 working-age adults within a 30-mile radius.
Which means absolutely nothing if none of those 50,000 people know how to operate advanced robotics or, manage a modern logistics supply chain.
Exactly. A workforce strategy, on the other hand, is active and dynamic. It means the region has built a mechanism to actually generate the talent the company needs.
Let's talk about the mechanics of that. Like, what does a workforce strategy actually look like in practice?
Well, in a region that truly understands economic development, the local leaders will actually sit down with the company's human resources department months before the facility opens.
Okay.
They will look at the exact spec sheets for the machinery the company is installing. Then, the local economic development agency goes to the regional community colleges and vocational schools, and they fund or design a custom 12-week certification course to teach residents how to use that exact machinery.
Wait, really? They are training the operators before the ribbon is even cut on the building?
Yes. The company gets to hire a graduating class of locals who already know how to run the factory on day one.
That is incredible.
It really is. It removes the massive burden of having to import talent from out of state or, spending millions on internal training programs from scratch.
Because, think about the alternative. And for you listening, think about it. What good is a brand new, beautiful facility with the best tax structures and the fastest internet if you can't hire a single person who knows how to actually operate the equipment?
Right, and companies have been burned by that exact scenario. They build the facility, they hold a job fair, and they realize the local talent gap is simply too wide. That is why they actively hunt for communities that treat workforce development as infrastructure.
Workforce as infrastructure.
Exactly. A town that invests in community college pipelines and career preparation gives the company the confidence that they can scale. If they need to add a second shift in 3 years, they know the talent pipeline is already flowing.
So we have all these totally distinct and honestly sometimes competing viewpoints around the table. The finance team is demanding 10-year predictability.
Right.
The investors are demanding 90-day speed. Operations needs physical capacity and heavy infrastructure. And human resources needs a long-term dynamic talent pipeline.
And this is exactly where the energy in the boardroom completely changes.
The tipping point.
The tipping point. After hours of analyzing data and debating logistics, the leadership team starts to notice the real qualitative differences between the locations.
Like what?
Well, maybe one region is slow to return phone calls, or another has patchy documentation on their power grid. But one region stands out. They answer questions with data. They have clear infrastructure blueprints for their shovel-ready sites. They offer transparent tax frameworks and a guaranteed 90-day permitting timeline.
The psychological shift in the room happens the moment the friction disappears. They stop asking, can we make this work? And they start asking, when do we start?
Exactly. The expansion suddenly stops feeling like a massive, terrifying risk. It just feels like inevitable progress.
So what does this all mean? Because I'll be honest, I have always thought that economic development was essentially just cities throwing massive tax breaks at companies.
A lot of people think that.
Right. You see the headlines all the time, a city offering hundreds of millions of dollars in incentives just to lure a corporate headquarters. It feels like a giant bidding war.
Yeah, the conventional wisdom is that whoever writes the biggest check wins the company. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the reality of corporate expansion, as understood by experienced leaders and really highlighted by the Fulton County model, is that preparation matters infinitely more than incentives.
But why wouldn't a company just take the biggest pile of free money?
Because a massive tax break is completely useless if the factory is delayed by 2 years of zoning board fights. A municipal grant means nothing if you can't hire skilled operators because the local schools are underfunded. Incentives are a sweetener, sure, but they cannot fix a broken environment. Experienced executives know that a community offering a giant tax break but lacking shovel-ready sites and workforce pipelines is usually acting out of desperation, not preparation.
Wow. So they're basically trying to bribe you to ignore the fact that their foundation is crumbling.
Exactly. The best regions understand that companies are not just shopping for a plot of land or a tax credit. They are shopping for an environment for growth.
An environment for growth.
Yes, and an environment for growth requires intense behind-the-scenes preparation that takes years to build.
Which perfectly encapsulates the philosophy of the Fulton County Industrial Development Agency. They have built their entire model around the idea that an environment for growth has to be constructed long before the company ever comes knocking.
Right. Their strategy is to be a collaborative partner, not just a landlord. They invest the time and capital into making all their sites places like Tryon Technology Park or, the Johnstown Industrial Park.
Right, and the Crossroads Business Park.
Exactly. Crossroads, Hills Mills, Vale Mills. They make all these areas ready for immediate action. They forge the ties with local educational institutions. They offer clear, predictable pathways for development.
They essentially act as the shock absorbers for a company's execution risk.
That's a great way to put it. And when a region acts as a competent partner, it creates a deeply symbiotic relationship. The company gets the predictable, friction-free expansion they need to generate revenue.
Right.
And in return, the region gets strong, sustainable investments that elevate the entire community. The new factory brings jobs, those jobs fund local services, and the region becomes even more attractive for the next wave of growth.
It really is the blueprint for modern economic development. It requires the 10-year vision of the CFO, the 90-day urgency of the investor, the physical reality of the operations director, and the human focus of the HR team. All of it just has to lock together perfectly.
It does. And to you listening, whether you are a local official trying to attract jobs to your county, a business leader planning your company's next major move, or simply someone observing a new industrial park being built on the edge of your town, you now understand the secret language of corporate expansion. You know the intense debates happening behind those closed boardroom doors.
Yeah, it's about the quiet, relentless preparation, not the flashy promises. Which leaves me with a final thought for you to mull over. If deep preparation and physical readiness truly beat financial incentives when it comes to winning business expansions, does that mean the traditional bidding wars between cities are becoming obsolete? If the smartest companies in the world are prioritizing a friction-free environment for growth over a quick municipal payout, perhaps the future of economic development isn't about who can write the biggest check. Perhaps it is simply about who can build the most functional, robust community. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.